Hey, welcome to another episode of TripOverDrip. This week we got a really special guest. We have my wife.
Hi, I'm wife.
Yeah, her name is Chantelle. So ideally, as you can see, most of the people I'm going to be getting up in here for the next few weeks are people who are just close to me, relatively in my vicinity, my family and friends. If you wanted to get on one for a Zoom podcast, possibly, you can email me at trip_drip@icloud.com and we can set that up. But let's get into the podcast. All right, so I guess my very first question is, who are you and how did you get here?
Who am I and how did I get here? I'm Chantelle. I got here specifically in the car after work, but I got here. I guess how we met. We met over Facebook. You were just a suggested friend, and the universe was like, "Here you go, it's time." And there you are.
All right. Yeah, I actually that was the first attempt asking that question, but it's just going to be the opening question for everybody.
Okay,
Is who are you and how'd you get here? And
I like that.
give everybody the opportunity to answer the question.
I feel like my actual response could be quite lengthy, so I feel like that's a good short version.
I understand that. You're here to talk. It's not me. We're here to ask you questions, so we can get right into this. All right, so we'll just start off with just a random question. What is the most embarrassing moment you ever experienced in high school?
The most embarrassing moment? Oh man. Can we do a different question?
Why?
Because um what did it have to be like at school or just like during
Nope.
that time in my life?
During that period of time,
One time I
something you never told anyone that happened.
I mean, I guess I've kind of told people that this happened. It was just like a looking back a funny experience, like a stupid experience, I guess, and embarrassing. Um I snuck out of my house at night and went to go hang out with some guys and was drinking. There were some girls that we were all hanging out, and I drank too much E&J, and then I really wanted some milk after. And so I drank a glass of milk after, and I threw up for like 4 hours all over this guy's bedroom, all over his bathroom. I was mortified.
Something that have a horror story from milk as well is when I was in a group home when I was like 15 or 16 years old. One of the initiation things that we would do to people is they came in for like the very first, I guess, Saturday breakfast, because it was like a big breakfast where we all ate amongst each other, is we would get people to put pineapple juice in their cup of milk, and the citric acid from the pineapple juice makes the milk automatically curdle. But we would tell people it's like pineapple milk, you have to try this, and it was pretty funny. But
That's disgusting.
for some reason you talking about milk, I don't know why that was the thought that came
It
to my
really was
head.
kind of like curdled milk as I threw up, so that makes sense why you thought about that.
All right, so I guess we'll get into some more actual serious conversation. That was just kind of to break the ice, to loosen you up a little bit. But another question that I'm going to ask, because mind you, this is only my the second person I've talked to was Soda. Other than that, it was you, the podcast we had a year and a half ago or whatever. So I guess up until October 1st, all of these people I have on here are experiments. So I'm going to, I guess my question for you is, what gives you purpose in life, and why?
Lots of things give me purpose. I find purpose in being a mom, being a wife. I find purpose in my job, in being a friend. I feel like lots of things bring me purpose because I feel like anything that brings like positivity and goodness into my life, not necessarily taking from my cup, are things that do that.
Okay. So what's one thing specifically that has given you purpose in the past, but has not intentionally, but life has just caused it to drift away?
I feel like some of my hobbies sometimes do that because I do have a lot of hobbies. And probably one of my favorite hobbies is painting, and that's something that I don't do very often anymore. I do it occasionally, but I feel like I used to do it a lot more.
We did.
And that is something that brings me a lot of joy and purpose and helps me work through a lot of like things that I'm feeling, whether it's like emotions or trauma or positive things in my life or like experiences that I want to remember. I feel like that's something that does bring me a lot of joy.
So why did you stop painting?
Because I got busy in my head. I know that's not like a real excuse necessarily as to why I stopped painting, but in my mind, that's the justification behind it of like, I'm busy. Work has been really busy. You know, a few months ago we moved. That was really busy. I do feel like work has been a lot of it too, just because I did take on a new position at my job, which has taken a lot more from me, not necessarily in a bad way. It's just more draining, I guess. Like I come home and I'm more tired.
Mentally tired?
Yeah, like just mentally tired. Just I've had a lot more going on, more
Doing
mental strain.
just doing too much boss shit?
Yeah. And so I feel like that's kind of my excuse. And I feel like that can easily be an excuse for lots of things that bring purpose, you know, because I also feel like going to the gym also brings me a lot of purpose and it helps me feel really good. And that's something that I've been slacking on like the last 2 weeks specifically. And I've really actually today was talking to you about things that I need to do that bring me joy and happiness, and that definitely is one of them. And I need to hold myself more accountable to doing those things rather than just like sitting in my shit and feeling shitty.
Right. I can't remember who it was that we were watching, but we were watching something together when they said it doesn't matter whether you're crying or you're celebrating. You cry or celebrate for one day, and then it's like back to the grind. And I feel like I can.
I do remember watching that. I don't remember who it was.
I don't remember who it was either, but I feel like I can relate to that a lot. I feel like there's a lot of things that I thoroughly enjoy to do, but sometimes day to day in the moment, I feel overwhelmed, or I feel I may have woken up late. And so automatically I may have started my day feeling rushed. And so everything is in a rush, and it's like I'm having to be here by this time and do this. And sometimes I even feel that way when there's not really actually anything I actually have to do, which the things that I know that I need to get done. Just waking up later than I'm supposed to, that one thing, and feeling rushed all day long could allow myself later in the day to make the excuse to myself that I'm tired and I've been going all day to just sit and rot and scroll or whatever it may be. And more times than not, there's a lot of times where, I mean, maybe I'm doing that weeks at a time sometimes.
Yeah. And I feel like it's really easy to get into the rut. And I feel like sometimes we forget that it's also easy to get out of the rut too. Because once you actually start doing those things and you develop that habit, even though it does take longer to break up a habit, right? It also is quick to develop a habit. So if you're like doing those things and staying on top of them and staying consistent, I feel like it's actually easy to get out of the rut. It's just that first initial step of getting out of it.
So what, I guess, if from what I'm hearing you say, it sounds like you are explaining to be in some sort of rut. So personally for you, in past times where you've been in those ruts, one, is life chaotic to where you're not able to even contemplate or think about what to get out of the rut because of your emotional state day to day? And two, what things have helped in the past to help you get out of I guess a motivational rut to do things outside of necessary tasks day to day, being a mom, going to work, etc.
I feel like, honestly, I just have to do it. I just have to like tell myself that's what I'm doing and I have to do it no matter what. And I know that I can do that because I've done that before, and I have to just continue to do that. But it's not allowing yourself any excuses, you know, and I feel like that's something really easy that anyone can fall into. I mean, I do all the time. I'm too tired. I didn't sleep well last night, as could be a reason of why I don't wake up earlier to go to the gym. Or I had a lot going on at work today, and then I had to come home and we made dinner, or we had to go to the grocery store, or say we had to go pick up the kids later from school that day. It's easy to be like, oh, I'm not going to crochet some of my crochet chains to hang on the curtain that I'm making, or I'm not going to do something else aside from like play Fortnite or sit on my phone.
Right.
Because I'm too tired to do those other things.
Do you think
So it's just like doing it, and it's easy to say just do it, but really you just have to do it. I feel like something that helps me get into that mind space is listening to Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson?
Yeah. No, not Mel Gibson. What's her name? Mel. She's blonde. My phone's recording right now, so I can't pull it up. Not Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson's a man.
Yeah.
Mel Robbins. She's a blonde lady.
Okay. She's like a motivational.
She is.
Okay.
I feel bad that I just butchered her name.
It's all
Because
right.
I'm like Mel Gibson.
Yeah, I was about to say, like the dude who made all those movies and been in movies and stuff.
No,
Like,
I think it's Mel Robbins is her name. She's like a blonde lady. But she's like notorious for just like being like, you just have to do it. Like her biggest thing is like, you count to 5 in the morning when you hear your alarm. And on number 5, you just like get up and go. It doesn't matter anything else. You allow yourself that 5 seconds and you go.
it's kind of probably like a, maybe not so aggressive or in a masculine energy, but like a David Goggins, like,
Yeah.
just get off your ass and just go do it. Stop making excuses, et cetera, et cetera. Like, why do you make excuses to yourself? Things won't change if you just keep lying to yourself, or what? I'll just like motivate. Obviously, it's not a very in like an attacking manner, obviously, but
Those things can be cliche, like kind of, I mean, sometimes you see them and you're like, oh, whatever. But like really, if you're like in a rut and you listen to a lot of those multiple times, eventually it's going to like penetrate your brain and do something.
right. I think the one person I could probably listen to continuously talk is probably Wim Hof. For some reason, I think that his voice is
Quite soothing.
just like, it's got like a melody to it, and he's just
Yeah.
talking, and
He sing talks.
yeah, he's got like some Scandinavian accent, mountain man.
He like
from Swedish or Holland or Poland.
Where one of those.
Scandinavia is in that area too, isn't it?
I don't
Pretty
know,
sure.
to be honest, actually.
I don't know. Maybe I just butchered that, and people are gonna comment like, "No, Scandinavia is over here."
In Canada. No, it's another
No,
country.
he's in like Europe. Remember when Yes Theory went and like jumped off and went to his house or whatever? I swear it's in like Armenia, Georgia, like somewhere Europe,
Yeah.
Turkish,
Like Alps.
the Alps. Oh
I
man.
remember that video though. That
Yeah.
Wim Hof in general is quite motivational, especially like his story and just like the reason why he does what he does with like losing his wife and just like fighting depression and finding ways to cope with it. Really like, I feel like I heard about Wim Hof, but once I actually like heard his story and like watched videos on him, it's a very enlightening experience to like hear his reasoning behind it. And a lot of it is just like willpower of pushing through. It's not necessarily the physical benefits always. It's the mental of like doing hard things.
Yeah, I can agree. He does like obviously promote cold exposure and breath work, et cetera, but that's not the benefits for his body is not why he does it. It's because he has found peace in doing hard things that he was able to use those things to cope during the loss of after he lost his wife. It wasn't that he was actually carrying like, oh, going in the cold water is going to increase my brown fat. He didn't
Right.
he didn't
That wasn't
say
like
that.
the initial intention.
No, he was just trying to shock his body to just stop allowing that negative.
That was like brought in
Yeah.
when the scientific proof was needed, and it was like, okay, well, this isn't just like a me thing. There's like actually benefits to it and health things
Right.
that can help people.
And now he's like changed the whole medical arena when it comes to cold, I think that actually when it comes to the cold, I've heard stories for a long, long time about how back in the day before, the world we have today, maybe 200, 300 years ago, maybe even shorter than that, but they would put babies outside in the wintertime, like with no covering, and allow their body to
They still do
acclimate
that.
to the cold to boost their immune system. I'm sure they do it in other countries.
They do, yeah. I actually saw a video on TikTok like yesterday or today about that. Someone like, I think it's in Scandinavia.
Yeah, it's like to boost it. It helps your body naturally keep a strong immune system because the cold triggers a whole bunch of stuff inside of your body to produce more white blood cells and increase circulation to help you stay warm, et cetera,
I think I did, speaking of cold dips, I think I did my very first one. I don't remember if we had met yet or we had just met maybe.
No, I remember when I got out of prison, you had already been doing cold dips that whole entire the previous winter is when you guys would go and cut
It
the
was just like
hole in the ice.
like 2 months prior to you.
No, because you were cutting the hole in the ice. I got out in August.
Right, but we met in like the end of October. So I'm pretty sure it was like October, maybe I started, maybe
Somewhere around there. But yeah, I think that I mean, I'm to be honest, I'm really grateful that we have at least ingrained that into our children is the idea of cold dips and getting in the water and all of that stuff. I feel like they probably enjoy it and it means something to them more than we can ever even read from their what they say or how they act. I think that's one thing that they're going to remember for their entire lives is going to the river every Sunday and cold dipping, and watching mom and dad get in there when there's ice or what, what I'm saying?
yeah, no, I agree.
Okay. Next question. That was a pretty good one, huh? All right. Let's see. The next question is, what would you say is the most common thing that couples could work on average,
Communication.
and why?
I feel like communication is like the key base element of healthy relationships, because when you have communication, there should be no miscommunication, which will lead to less arguments and less misunderstandings and just overall better health of the relationship when you're openly talking about things like, and I feel like that's in all senses. I mean, I know everyone does things differently, but I know something that helps us a lot is we communicate about our finances openly because we share finances. There is no like your money or my money, it's our money. We also communicate about things that need to be done in our homes. There's no like unmet expectations of like, oh, I wanted you to do this and I did tell you I wanted you to do it, but I gave you like a hint that I wanted it done. So now my feelings are hurt because you didn't do it. It's like, hey, I need you to do this for me. Can you do it today? And if you don't do it, then it's like, oh, I didn't do this. I'm going to do it tomorrow. So I feel like it just brings like everyone to the same level, and there's no like higher or lower, and you're just like equal because you're communicating, and there's no lack of trust or anything. Then like communication's key.
Okay, so then what if for one, that's why I think, and I've said this a lot, is that I think communication and the making sure that kids learn how to communicate is so important. And that for me, for example, I mean, I never was in the class because I mean I thought it sounded stupid. The high school class communications, I think that's more like networking type stuff. I don't necessarily think it's actually like vernacular speaking, you know. But it's not. It's not.
I feel like debate classes are kind of like speaking classes. That's like communication and speaking skills, because I mean, really, debate format is similar to clear communication because you're not attacking each other.
Right. But I think that one of the reasons why communication potentially for just humans in general, not necessarily in a relationship, is the fact that we're not taught from a young age correct ways to cope or emotionally regulate. So if you can't emotionally regulate, you're not ever going to actually be able to effectively communicate how you think and feel, because you're going to be reactive to the emotions. You're going to yell out of anger. You're going to act bitter because of this or that. I feel like the idea of being able to emotionally regulate also helps with the ability to have effective communication, to specifically in the relationship, to be able to say, hey, this hurts my feelings, please don't do this, or does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think to kind of piggyback with that, when there is communication, making sure that you're speaking to understand rather than just like speaking to or listening to respond. That was what I meant to say. Making sure that you're listening to understand rather than just like respond or wait to say what you have to say next. I feel like that actually listening, and I know this like kind of sounds cliche, but like in my job, something that we do is like we rebuttal, right? That's like a term that we use, and we use a term called ABC, which is acknowledge, benefit, and continue. And I feel like that's something that I use in my everyday life all the time, not just at work, because when that's like a super clear communication style is like you're acknowledging that you heard what they said. Maybe not necessarily, you're not rebuttaling, so there's no benefit, but then you can continue on to what you're saying. Sure, you can give your part, but I feel like that acknowledgement and like giving them some form of like understanding is super important with that. Because if you're just like listening and then you say what you have to say, it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess fuck what I said.
Right.
But when you're being like, hey, I hear that you're upset when I do this, or I can understand how that can make you feel when this happens.
Do you think more people have a problem telling people how they feel, or do you think people are more reactive when hearing how they make someone feel? Do you think they're natural? Like it's easier for someone to say "you make me feel this way," or is it easier for someone to hear "you make me feel this way"?
As someone who has struggled telling people how I feel, for me, it's easier to receive feedback about how so I make someone else feel. But I mean, I feel like it all depends upon how you are with that skill specifically is how you would respond to that. Because I mean, there are lots of people I know that probably struggle a lot more hearing feedback about themselves, or the way that you make someone feel. To me, I feel like I it's not necessarily a critique, I guess, but like I want to hear how I make people feel, or if I did something to upset someone or something like that. So I'd much rather hear that than tell someone how I feel because that's something I struggle with.
Right. So, have you always been at the level you are now at your communication?
No, definitely not.
What was the hardest things that you had to realize and work on to get to where you're at?
I felt like for a long time, due to many different traumas in my life, whether that's childhood trauma or trauma in relationships or through adulthood or many different things, I, in my head, came up with the, I guess, idea that what I had to say didn't have value or didn't have meaning. Or there would be times where I would say something and what I had said wasn't heard, or it was just like heard over, like brushed over, like it wasn't there, or so I felt. It's how I perceived it, because perception is subjective, right? And so I feel like once I came to terms with what I do have to say is important and my voice is important and I am smart, I feel like that's a big part of it too, is I felt really stupid for a long time. And I know I'm not a stupid person, but I feel like just from different relationships in my life, I was treated as if I was stupid. So that's like how you see yourself, right? Is if you're treated that way for a while. And so I feel like just working through those things and honestly having your support and reminding me that what I do have to say has value and that there's no reason to hide how I feel, that itself, having the support of someone who wanted me to do that and helped support me do that was like a huge part
Like
to bring me here. Yeah.
encouraging you to express it and telling you that you didn't do anything wrong for feeling this way, et cetera, stuff like that.
Yeah, as well as like you also are a really good example of just like saying how you feel. And so I feel like watching you actually do that gave me a lot of encouragement as well to try doing it more.
Just in general, just always just saying exactly how I feel, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna get into some juicy stuff, I guess here. So I guess I'll leave you to explain it, but I want you to go back to the most recent darkest time of your life that you have up until recent date, up until where you are today. Because I'm from knowing you personally, I know the journey that you have went through. Kind of give maybe you don't have to say where you were at, what you were doing, or whatever, but just kind of give a brief description of how your life was, what your emotional state was, things that were happening, and then just kind of let's just keep going to up until present day and just kind of talk about your journey from where you were to who you were to what you looked like to where you are today.
Okay. I guess. Well, first, will you rephrase the question? I feel like there's a lot of information there, and so I want to make sure that I answer it correctly. So,
Okay, so I'm trying to place you consciously amongst one of the lowest parts of your addiction when life was in shambles, you didn't have mental health, maybe self-esteem, confidence, all of these things, and just kind of, start us on the journey of how you got here? Because I think that story in itself, without even knowing preemptively what you're going to say, I think there's lots of people that will be able to resonate from how you're feeling to what you experienced to what you went through or how what et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it probably started in my childhood of just like my life in general. I feel like a lot of low times in my life in my childhood were friendship related. I struggled a lot with friends growing up with like maintaining strong friendships or having friends that didn't end up like doing hurtful things or saying hurtful things or I mean, I myself too like looking back now as an adult, maybe there was times too where I did do something that hurt someone and I didn't realize I did and that's why they treated me that way, but from my perception, again, perception is subjective, so like I struggled a lot with friends like my whole entire life and so that's always been something that's like been hard for me is feeling strong in my friendships and like also I think that still to this day holds me back in like making new friendships is because I've had so many struggles with friendships in my life that I
You're good with the ones you
good
have.
with the ones I have. I can nurture the ones I have. There's I as much as I love talking and meeting new people, it's hard for me to take on more friendships into my life because I feel like I give so deeply to my friends and I care so deeply that like it I'm good with what I got, you
Right.
know? But so that's definitely been like a struggle in my life growing up as friends. So how people see me, that definitely feeds into that too. As well as I struggled with self-esteem issues my entire life with not liking the way that I looked or the way that I perceived other people thought the way that I looked too. And so that's always been something that I had an issue with on top of feeling isolated from people and making friends. So that was kind of something I feel like throughout my childhood was a hard part for me, as well as like I grew up with two different families of my very LDS family, my parents, my mom, and my stepdad, and then also my dad's side who was not religious at all. So like completely different lifestyles, which probably highly affected me because it was like polar opposites and I didn't know which one to do and what to go with and it was I mean I was a kid, my
Right.
brain was developing, I didn't know what was going on, I was just going through life. So and then I think becoming an adult and wanting to be independent and getting into a relationship really early in my life. I mean, I was with Tuff's dad from like 18 and we like moved in together and started doing drugs together and making poor choices together. And then I got pregnant at a really young age and that was like hard too. And I was like a single mom because Tuff's dad was in prison. And so working through that as well as like trying to be sober and going back to live with my parents and all of those things. I feel like from the minute I turned 18 up until I was like 25, life was pretty crazy of just like lots of different things going on in my life.
Like no stability.
Yeah, there was like not a lot of stability because when I did turn 18, I did move out and I became an adult and I wanted to do things for myself and I didn't want to do the regular route of like going to college and doing those things. I just wanted to like be an adult and like have a job and do things. I think I just wanted to be independent. I wanted to figure life out for myself because I feel like that's just me as a person too, you know?
What were the hardest? What was the hardest parts to figure out during that time? Like what is it that made just jumping right into adulthood and wanting independence without, I guess, proper planning or really having an understanding? Because like you said, we were just kid, you know, like
Yeah.
you don't really. I don't think that adults really understand adulting until you've actually been like full time adulting for like few years,
Right.
you know.
Well, I feel like I probably thought because I mean, I had had a job since I was like 15. So I've been working pretty consistently for like 3 years. So I was able to maintain having a job. So to me that was like, okay, I can do everything else if I can like have a job. And but I really had like no concept of like paying bills, um figuring out transportation, groceries. I mean, like any basic adult things I don't feel like I necessarily knew how to do. And so I just like had to figure it out on top of like doing drugs at the same time and probably making it a lot harder for myself. Um so yeah, I wish I would have had more like, you only know what you know, right?
Right.
And so looking back in hindsight, sure, I definitely wish I would have had more skills that I know now of like how to take care of myself independently. But that's what got me here now, I guess, is just figuring it out.
Just a side tangent, do you think that that experiencing that helps you for when your children become teenagers, like to make sure that they understand at least these basic concepts of potentially what adulthood may look like or may not look like, to give them at least a smoother playing field as they go out into the world?
Absolutely. I feel like that's something that I definitely will do for our children. I see us doing is like teaching them how to open up a bank account and how to pay a bill online, or to credit related things, like anything like that. Like I still feel like I'm figuring out credit related things.
Yeah, I
And I've been
agree.
dealing with it for well over a decade.
Right.
But I feel like once my kids are adults, hopefully I'll have more information by then and can help them get into a much better position than I put myself in.
Okay, so after the hardship of adulthood and just jumping right into independence, how did your journey unfold up into many years clean and sober, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I got sober for a while, and it was just me and Tough. And I was living at my mom's house, but I was like working and I was sober, and I'd been sober for like almost 2 years. And then I met Andrew's dad, and it was definitely like super lust. It was like I just needed to be loved. That's definitely something I've struggled with my whole life, is like validation from feeling like I needed to be loved, because I didn't really feel loved by people that I felt like I should be loved by. And I'm not saying they didn't necessarily love me, but in the way that I needed to be loved, you know? And so I feel like that is a downfall that I struggled with throughout my life, was just like looking to men for validation. And so I met him and very quickly relapsed and went back into using drugs, and found myself pregnant again. And I stopped doing drugs, and I just became extremely depressed because I, for one, stopped doing drugs while my partner was still doing drugs, and I was pregnant and I had a toddler, and I was just like miserable and hated my job and hated my relationship and just like didn't want to do any of that. But I just like continued to do it because I was like, I need to have a family, and I need to like stay with my child's father this time, and I need to like maintain stability for my kids, and I need to like not do drugs, and I need to like be healthy. And I like desperately wanted a normal life. And I like was trying to cling to it in every way that I thought that I could, in the most unhealthy ways possible. And then my kids got taken by the state for a year almost. And it was an extremely hard time of my life, but also like a huge blessing, because it allowed me to get out of the relationship that I was in and focus on myself and be sober and get my kids back and do the things that I needed to do and like become a functioning adult and like have the normalcy that I was like looking for. And so at that point, losing my children was probably like one of the hardest things to deal with ever in my life. I felt like we talked about purpose in the beginning, and I feel like my kids bring me huge purpose in my life. And so not having them brought like, what am I doing? Why am I even doing this if they're not here with me, you know? And I feel like that itself like kicked me into gear of like, okay, well then you need to do the shit that you need to do. Like you need to have your kids, obviously. Like this is the purpose that you need in your life. Like you love being a mom and they need you. And so I feel like that itself was enough for me to just be like, okay, that's enough. And like, just do it.
And that just was what the event was that just kind of just flipped the switch. Just like, I'm just not gonna do this no more. It's over for me. Because I feel like this happens a lot to like they have like these rigid lesson plans on how people can stop using, and I really feel as if like there would need to be an individual book for every individual person because everybody ticks differently. So these like rigid rules that you can't do this, etc., don't really necessarily work. I feel like the only thing that prevents the addict from going back out again is that person has to experience enough pain from his or her choices to finally just say, I've had enough.
Yeah.
To actually give an actual attempt at something different. And then I feel it naturally happens like if you, I mean, because everybody's sobriety is different. Some people need those culty AA, you can't relapse or even, ingest medical cannabis. So they have like these really rigid,
They do.
you
And
know,
I also feel, even though I no longer associate with NA or AA, I do feel like it played a huge part of my life when I needed it. I do feel like, even though that isn't necessarily what I use or practice today or the guidelines that I live by any longer, I feel like at that point in my life, I needed that. I needed that structure and I needed that support and those guidelines to allow me to get to this position now. It was like one of those stepping stones in my life, you know what I mean? Because really, at the time, it did give me friendships, which is something I really struggled with. It brought a lot of really amazing people in my life at that time who gave me a lot of really great support and carried me through like really shitty times, and it also gave me like community of not just friends, but like events that I would do to like get out of my house and not be depressed inside my house when I didn't have my kids, as well as it gave me something to hold myself accountable to, that every week I would make sure that I was like at my home group, at my meeting, doing what I needed to do, because that was how I was holding myself accountable to stay sober, because I like couldn't do it because I didn't even have my kids and I was just like so lost and like trying to like do drug treatment and like trying to like, I was also like homeless for a while and like trying to find a place to live and like just trying to figure it out, as well as like kind of being in a half relationship and not really wanting to be, but like still like trying to make it work, but also like not, because I'm not really supposed to. There was still like this weird toxic thing with my relationship. And I mean, really truly getting my kids back fully in the end by myself, I feel like was the solidifying point. And I still just like kind of stayed for a little bit longer because I feel like that's really all I knew how to do. And that's like all I thought I was worth at the time. I think also my self-worth was still really low because I didn't really like the way that I looked. I was really overweight. I was really unhealthy. And I understand that happens like when you get sober too. Oftentimes people like gain weight when they get sober because you're so malnourished and unhealthy when you're using, so I felt like my self-esteem was just so low that I was like, well, at least I'm sober and I have like good communication with my friends and I like am doing some good things with my life, and like I guess I could maybe try to figure this out. And like I was like trying to do therapy, and then one day he just left, and I'm so happy that he just like left one day. He just like is like, I'm done with your shit, I'm out of here. And I was like, what? And I was like mortified because I was like, what the I've like stuck with you for years through addiction and all of these things, and you're just gonna leave me, you piece of shit.
right.
But like, I'm so happy that moment happened because I genuinely feel like I was in such a low place in my life that like, I don't know how long I would have just like continued at that level and not progressed in my life, and that definitely brought me into a depression for a little bit because I like was like I said, it was like, I've done all these things for all these years and now it's just like gone. Like, what am I doing? And then my friend Sarah, was like, just reappeared back into my life at that time. And was just like my best friend, and we did everything, and she like helped carry me through that super hard time in my life. And then I met you. You just appeared at the perfect time, and I was like not necessarily wanting to be in a relationship with anyone, and I just like was going to try to figure myself out and like do whatever I was going to do, and you just appeared, and you were perfect.
I wouldn't say that.
You were.
I feel like the first year of our relationship while I was in the halfway house was, I mean, obviously it's nothing what we experience now, because I was dealing with like a whole bunch of trauma just being out of prison, et cetera, et cetera. Just, if you haven't been there, if you don't know, you don't know. But when you're in those institutionalized settings, you know, you got 17 other grotesque, crude, inappropriate, you know, promiscuous men all cultivating ideas about what your girl's doing when she doesn't pick up the phone or she doesn't respond to a text. You know, it's like, oh, you lost your turn, G. You know what I mean? And you can only hear that so many times before, like, I guess you start paying attention to like really stupid things, and then you're like looking for the snake in the grass. You're gonna fucking get bit. You're gonna find, and your mind's gonna create things, you know. The whole time I'm like tripping on you, whether you're like, what are you doing? Why are you answering the phone? Whatever, you know. I'm just like manifesting you to like now in the real time as I'm talking about this, I'm like just manifesting this energy and just like living in this vibration of thinking that you're gonna leave me, you know, when
I was on the phone with you like 24/7.
Yeah, and like you would drive all the way from Utah to Wyoming, you know, once a month, sometimes twice a month, the whole time that I was out there, you know. Okay, so then let's get into a little bit. We've been going for about 40 minutes now, so we're going to get into a little bit more fun stuff. I just wanted to give you a little bit of time to, you know, give you...
We can finish part 2 of after we meet next time.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like there's actually been a lot since then
There's
as well.
a lot more,
I feel
too.
like I've lived probably 5 lives in the last 5 years.
It does seem like a whole entire lifetime ago, huh?
It does.
It's crazy as fuck.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Do you think the moon landing is real? And why yes or why no?
I just feel like I see too many things pointing me in the direction that it likely was not real. Like
The whole thing or all of it or parts of it?
I feel mixed because I feel like, I mean, okay, do I feel like we're in space now? Yeah. Do I feel like they're shooting rockets up and stuff in there and the things we see of Earth are real now? Yeah, I do. I feel like there's, like, that's real for sure. Do I feel like in that time that they really had all of that technology to do that and broadcast it to Earth and call the president and
the list goes on and on.
Yeah, and I mean the spaceship just looks a little sus. Like, I'm no rocket ship engineer, you know, so how I'm analyzing the spaceship, I don't really know what I'm looking at, but it just doesn't look right. You know, like, you know, when you look at something and you're just like, that feels off. That whole situation just like feels a little off to me. Like, there's definitely some kind of
information control.
Yeah, there's something mischievous going on there for sure.
Okay, next one. Do you believe in aliens?
Yes. Do I think they're little green people? Not necessarily, no. I feel like aliens themselves have the whole idea or concept of aliens has kind of broadened over the years, you know, because it's really just something foreign, not like from here, from our realm. So could they be green? Could they be gray? Could they be a light bubble? I don't know. Do I think they're coming from the sky? I'm unsure. Ocean, maybe. I just feel like there's definitely something. I don't know exactly what to classify an alien as anymore, to be honest, because I feel like there's just been so many different things.
They came across the border. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But I don't know. I feel like there's definitely something along the lines of like that isn't from here that is in the mix. or a variety of things, to be honest.
What are your thoughts about President Eisenhower meeting with the aliens in 1976?
That was crazy. To be honest, I had never heard of that until we watched that Y-Files. Um, do you know what is it called?
The Eisenhower Project,
But what
or
is
the Majestic 12?
the Majestic 12? The Y-Files did a video about that, and it was pretty crazy. I had never heard of it before up until then.
Yeah, if you haven't heard about it,
You should go watch it.
real quick, just for the people who haven't heard about it. Supposedly, the conspiracy goes that, and I could be wrong about the exact year, but supposedly 1976 or 19.
Eisenhower. So whenever Eisenhower,
Yeah, whenever
was
Eisenhower was president,
yeah.
I want to say 60 something, maybe 70
maybe
something.
even 50.
But he supposedly went to an Air Force base and had communication with extraterrestrials that were promising him free energy and prosperity all across the planet. All he had to do was get rid of all of the nuclear arsenal on the entire planet, help the ETs get rid of all world-ending weapons. And during that time, there was also the Greys, the Pleiadians, which are like the Nordics, the blonde hair, blue eyed aliens, is the ones that were like offering them prosperity for exchange for weapons. And then the Greys supposedly in this is all, conspiratorial, right? The Greys offered them power and money and
Top technology.
to allow them to experiment on us. And they would have unlimited power, and they would build these huge underground bases inside of our planet, and they would,
Like in the national parks.
yeah, national parks and huge mountains. They would have these huge bases, and they would basically operate here on planet Earth in disguise. Nobody
But no
knows
one would
about
ever
it.
know.
But no
they
one
would
would
like
ever
wipe their minds, and
It's a real Men in Black shit.
Yeah, no one would ever know that they were probed and things like that. But I mean, to be honest, looking at where we're at right now in this time in history, if that was real, if Eisenhower did have that deal with the Nordics and the Greys, I definitely think he took the Greys. Because, I mean, obviously there's nuclear power right now.
Right. Because the Pleiadians wanted to remove all world destruction weapons and basically create a utopia where there would be no need for the free energy for everybody. Because realistically, you think about it.
Do you think that's what the pyramids were? Do you think that was like a different time, like almost like a different period of history? Because I mean, the pyramids themselves are
mysterious.
Yeah.
I think that the pyramids were a power plant. They were using some sort of kinetic energy or frequency from the atmosphere
For like free energy.
for free energy. Yeah. And that's what, I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but the way that the pyramids look now aren't the way that they look. They were encased in gold and marble and
there was like
electric
tops on
conducting
them.
materials.
Yeah, there's like little metal tops too that brought all the energy with like an antenna.
Right. And they, and they use the aquifers underneath it, which are free flowing water to create kinetic energy, to also create energy. And then found that there's like ways that they were spreading this energy throughout the whole city, It's kind of crazy to think about.
But yeah, that conspiracy itself, I'd never heard up until recently, and it's pretty crazy.
It is pretty crazy.
It's a pretty good one.
Okay, so I guess maybe not the last one, but the next question that's kind of crazy and complex is, why are we here as humans? Like, what do you think we're here for? Do you think we're here it just was a freak accident? We just ended up happening through evolution in the Big Bang, and we came here and we're just intellectual animals just like the rest of them, but the rest of the animals on the planet, this animal just so happens to kill and eat all of them. We are just the same thing as them, and we are just sentient enough to be egotistical enough to think that there's something else.
No. I think on like a super deep level that we're all just our consciousnesses observing life. We're just like experiencing life and going through the things. And I think the purpose of life is to live life, whatever that looks like, through the goods, the bads, the highs, the lows, the happy times, the saddest times. It's to like feel and experience all of those things. I feel like that's why we're here.
Do you think that in the animal kingdom, in nature, there's such thing as evil?
I mean,
do you think that a predator, an apex predator in the wild, eating babies is evil?
Like baby animals?
Yeah. What we would perceive if I seen the human eating a baby, right?
Yeah.
We're
That's
just,
evil.
that's evil and disgusting, right?
Yeah.
But for other animals, is there evil in the animal kingdom, or is that only a human construct?
I feel like that's more of a human construct because I mean, you don't really see like a lion eating another lion. Sure, you'll see maybe a lion eating another type of baby animal.
I mean,
Sure.
they probably fight each other to defend territory, but you don't see them
Right.
hunting themselves.
Right, right. And so I do think that is like a human made construct because I mean there's intention behind being evil, right? There's an intent to do ill and evil things. That's what categorizes evil. But I mean even just like in terms of like brains and like how smart animals are in comparison to humans, I don't think that they even necessarily have that capability of like producing evilness. It's more like just pure in a sense because they don't have that part that we do.
Okay, so then on the flip side of that, if there was an animal that was injured and another animal came up and protected it from being ambushed, is that good?
Do animals do that?
I don't know. I'm asking. I mean,
I don't know if
I'm sure that
animals.
if there were a wolf tribe and one of the wolves was hurt and injured while they were attacking another predator or under attack, that potentially the wolves would then protect the injured one,
Right.
or
I feel like that's I
is
feel like
that good or is that instinct?
I feel like that's instinct, especially if you're talking about like packs and things like that. Because I mean, I don't necessarily know if like a random animal would do that for an animal because that's like
I mean,
having
there has to be stories of animals saving humans from other animals.
right. I guess we don't experience animals on that level to know for sure.
Right, but it just makes it interesting to think about how is good and evil a human construct because and I only started talking about this because you started talking about purpose of life, like why are we here? And then in my mind, I'm thinking about like spiritual aspects of it and heaven and hell and good and evil, etc. And then for some reason, I was just thinking about how like
I feel
I
like
think
that
that's just only something humans created.
I feel like that ties also in though with like polarity and
Duality, yeah.
duality and like that that whole area because like there has to be good to have evil, there has to be light to have dark, there has to be sadness to have happiness, and I feel like that's a part of the human experience of why we're here.
I agree. I
So
think
I
that's
don't
what makes us
necessarily
human.
yeah, so I don't necessarily know if that would apply to animals because I feel like that itself is a part of the human experience.
Right. So, like I've been saying this a lot lately, is that I think that we are spirits experiencing the human experience, not humans experiencing a spiritual experience. You know,
I agree. Because I think in there's a I don't necessarily know what happens when we die. I don't necessarily have strong beliefs in that, to be honest. Um,
but energy can never be destroyed or
I
only
know energy can
transformed.
never be destroyed, and I like the idea that depending upon where how we live our life here determines what happens when we die in a sense, you know. Um, Almost like very similar to living life, your perception is is what your subjection is, you know. So if you're thinking what your life is going to be like after and it's negative and low, that's probably what it's going to be like because you're manifesting your reality, right? And so for me, something that really resonates with me, speaking of like good, evil, what happens after life, after we live this purpose of life, I don't know what happens, but I do know something to do with death specifically. I don't know why I feel inclined talking about this, but Mateo that we watch talks about how when you die, it's important to raise frequencies up, right? You want to raise up the frequency so that they can lift up as high as they can to get to the highest level of the energy or whatever is up there after.
Right.
And I feel like that kind of goes into that whole concept as well. Because if that's what you're projecting and that's what you're wanting for someone after their life, that's what I feel like can help get them in that direction. And when we're talking about maybe negative things about like, oh, it's not necessarily negative of missing them, but like negative in the sense of like maybe reflecting on things that happened in their life or negative aspects of what happened. Those are things that can like bring them down lower. I think it's important to like really lift up afterwards.
I agree. I think that I like the fact that we've been saying grand rising, and I've really started to implement that because the word morning actually. So what if the spelling has changed? The word is still a negative word. It's like
It's kind of like an
you're
oxymoron.
like waking up to good. Hey, good morning. You're like that's something you would say while you were mourning or grieving, right?
Yeah, like
Whereas, like, I feel like the whole concept around death, I think, has been so controlled by church for so long. Just church, the word church in general, it doesn't matter what it is.
right.
But death has been controlled by church for so long that we, as a society, for a long time, have been, I guess, stuck in this idea of the heaven or hell type thing to where, like,
It makes death fearful.
it makes death fearful when really this is.
I feel like your human experience is over at that point, and that's just like what it is. Like your life here was meant to end at that time, and like yes, it's sad because you're not here anymore, or say someone passed away that you love and you're gonna miss. I mean, I've experienced loss. You've experienced loss, and it's hard and it's sad, but that that's just how it was supposed to be. And I know it's like easier said than done, and I know it's like really hard to hear, especially like after losing someone. It's hard to hear those things, but looking back now, I feel like, especially after losing Marley, my perception of death is so much different. And my perception of like living life in the moment has shifted a lot too, because like you have this life now and you need to live it and do the things that you have now because you don't know when it's going to end. And so I feel like that itself has given me a lot of purpose in my life and allowed me to focus more on the here and now versus like maybe previous things I've done in the past or like worrying about the future. I need to focus more on the here and now because I never know when it's going to end.
Right. You don't ever actually know. And I think that one of the things that just like subconsciously has set this baseline fear is most people. I mean, obviously, I can't speak up until this date because we're seeing a huge shift consciously, spiritually. All right, guys, we just had a little malfunction. My camera died, so obviously we're sitting next to each other. I really enjoyed having you on.
I loved being on. This was fun.
Yeah.
Even though we got kind of cut short at the end. It's okay.
We did get cut short. We probably could have kept talking.
We could have.
We do have, it is about an hour in. We've been going for an hour. But until we meet again.
Yes.